What's going on, Nasteey Nation? It's Nasteey, and in today's video, I'll be going over 5 things that I personally feel Riot desperately needs to fix within League of Legends. Now let me just start this video off by saying in no way am I making this video with the sole intention being for me to just complain, and even if it may come off that way, I truly am just trying to stir up the pot and potentially start a discussion that could very well lead to some positive changes within the game. At the end of the day, I've been playing this game for like 8 years or something crazy like that. I really love this game, and I would love nothing more than to see it continue to flourish. With all of that being said, feel free to join the conversation by letting me know what you think Riot needs to fix in the comment section down below. Join in the conversation, and I'll be looking forward to seeing what you guys all have to say. Also, do be sure to leave a like on the video if you do go on to enjoy it, and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. That should just about do it for this little introduction though, so without further ado, let's get into the video. So when you first clicked on this video, there was probably one thing that you had in mind, and I want to start this list off with one thing that I think the large majority of us would probably all be more than happy to see implemented into the game, and that is of course going to be the removal of autofill. I honestly can't think of a single person who plays League of Legends that has legitimately enjoyed the addition of autofill that they implemented a couple seasons ago. I think I know of like one YouTuber who kind of made a series out of it where they are doing this autofill or fill to diamond series, but aside from that one individual, I can't think of one person who has enjoyed this or has been happy to see it, or honestly anybody who is not pissed off when they see that they've been autofilled in Champion Select. Other than that, I don't think I really need to go into too much of an explanation here, because at its core, autofill is just simply unhealthy for the game. It causes players to be forced to play a role that they not only don't want to play, but also a role that they're most likely not going to be very good at, and that's thus going to hurt their entire team and thus hurt the effect of the game. And I guess you could argue that it balances out because sometimes there's going to be an autofill on your team and on the other team, but a lot of the time that's not the case. You could have some games where it's just so mismatched that you might have 3 players that are autofilled on your team, and the enemy team could have a fully stacked roster with 5 individuals who are all on their role. It's honestly just super inconsistent, and it doesn't really make up for it. Overall, autofill is just responsible for some pretty poor matchmaking and some pretty unenjoyable game experiences. Now, another thing that I'm going to at least attempt to do throughout this video is, rather than just bringing up these problems and not offering a solution, I'll at least try to give some input as far as how these problems could be fixed. So personally, I see 2 different options here. I think one really simple fix is just to remove it entirely from the game, go back to how it was a few seasons ago when autofill just didn't exist. But that is a little extreme, and I understand that, and I know that they did put autofill into the game for a reason. So I think the better solution here is just to have an option to toggle on or off whether or not you want to be autofilled. And if you choose to toggle off the autofill option, then there should be some kind of warning that lets you know that with autofill turned off, you will have longer queue times. It will take you longer to get into games. But I think that the large majority of people would be okay with this. When you're trying to get into a game of League of Legends, I think that more people care about what role you're getting in Champion Select rather than how long it takes you to get into Champion Select. Again, I understand that autofill was put into the game for a reason, so I don't think that getting rid of it entirely is going to be the best option, even though I do think that would be a simple fix. So having this toggle option could fix a lot of problems, and also just gives people the option to decide whether or not they are okay with having shorter queue times with the potential getting autofilled, or longer queue times and knowing that they're going to be able to get their role. At its core, autofill was originally just put into this game to prevent long queue times from occurring, but I would bet that many players, including myself, would be more than happy to just wait the additional time, as long as that means we are guaranteed the role that we signed up for. Last season, Riot actually did try to address this with the positional ranks that they implemented at the very start of the season, but as we all know now, looking back, that was a complete and utter failure. But on the bright side, it does at least show that they were putting some consideration and some thought towards the problem that is autofill. So I hope that in the future, they continue to give it kind of just a peace of mind and look for a fix moving forward. So like I mentioned previously, I'm assuming that a lot of you guys, when you first clicked on this video, you were expecting me to talk about autofill at some point in time. So at least that's out of the way. Next up, I want to talk about something that isn't as agreed upon, I guess you could say, amongst the League community. This is something that I personally have a nitpick towards, but that is going to be the ranked system as a whole, and more specifically, the process of promoting and demoting. My main problem with the ranking system that they have in place right now is just the fact that it takes so incredibly long to actually get anywhere, and I understand why they have this in place and why this is the way that it is, and that's just because they want you to continue to come back to the game and play it more and more and more. And with the rank system being so difficult and making it so difficult to climb, in order to actually get to the rank that you want to be, you're going to have to continue to come back to this game day after day and grind multiple games in order to just get anywhere whatsoever. So yes, I do understand that aspect, but that's also the problem at the same time. The problem is there's going to be a lot of people who have other stuff going on in their life, and they just simply don't have the time to grind the amount of games that are necessary to actually climb in this game. Some people have jobs, some people are in schools, some people have families. Overall, there's just going to be a lot of people who have other stuff they need to deal with, and they won't have time to put 10 games in per day just to get anywhere. Just to put things into perspective here, it takes 500 LP plus the games that you need to win in promos in order to climb a complete division. And if somebody has, let's say, 3 hours in their day, and it takes something like 45 minutes from the time of starting up the queue to the end of the game, then at the end of the day, you're only going to have time for 4 games. Even if you're playing out of your mind and you have a 75% win rate, which means you're winning 3 out of every 4 games, you're still only going to be up around 35 to 40 LP per day. And again, that's being optimistic and assuming that you're winning 75% of your games. Now, if you take into account all the days where you're having maybe just an off day or having unlucky teams or just bad games, now you're losing games and you're going backwards, and the 3 hours that you might have had to play in that day have completely gone to waste, and instead of going forward, you've moved backwards. Now throw on top of that promotion series where sometimes you have to win 3 out of 5 games just to get anywhere. You can already begin to see just how difficult it can be to climb if you don't have enough time to put in the games necessary. A huge problem that I've personally had over the years is that gap right between Diamond 1 and Masters. The problem here is when you demote out of Masters, you actually go all the way down to 50 LP, which means it's going to take at least 3 wins in order to get back into promos, then another 3 wins on top of that just to win promos. So at the end of the day, demoting from Masters then means you have to win 6 games in a row just to get back to where you were. Now I know that this example here about the ranked system and the problems within promoting and demoting and all that stuff was a little all over the place. I kind of just tried to toss out as many examples as I could to try to set a good image of what I'm trying to put out there, but I hope it made sense and I hope you guys agree with me. But again, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Moving on from the ranked system, now I want to talk about communication within League of Legends, and I guess more specifically the lack of communication. In my opinion, every great esport ever, aside from League of Legends, has voice comms. I honestly just don't understand why after all of these years, voice comms still haven't been implemented into the game. With that being said, I could see why they're being hesitant towards putting voice comms into League of Legends. After all, League of Legends is kind of thought of to be the most toxic gaming community in the entire world, so that kind of does make a little sense to me. But at the same time, there are ways around this, and there are ways to implement voice comms without having to deal with toxic players. Personally, I think this is a no-brainer. I think the fix here is the same option that I offered earlier in the video when I was talking about autofill, and that is just to have an option to voice comms, allow players to have the option to toggle it on or off. If you don't want to join the voice comms for a game, you don't have to. It just makes things really simple, but at least it gives you the option to communicate with your team a little bit more efficiently. This will allow people like streamers who just want to interact with their audience and not have to talk with their teams to have that option, but it also allows people who are trying to try hard in their ranked games to communicate more efficiently with their team and not have to rely on typing and pinging. I just feel like typing takes too much time away from the game, and I can't tell you how many times I've died because I was too busy typing. And pinging, although it is efficient and effective, it doesn't give you nearly enough options to communicate the way that you need to communicate with your teammates. There's no way I could possibly communicate with my team that I want a 1-3-1 split push, or I want to sneak Baron, or I want to do a bait push just through pinging, or I would have to resort to typing some long paragraph in chat. I just don't see the combination of typing and pings being enough, so I definitely think voice comms are a must here. And just to go back to the previous point that I mentioned about toxic players and how that could be a problem, honestly, I really believe that toxicity would lower in voice comms. Again, you will run into some players who are just so incredibly toxic that it's not going to stop them. But I think the human interaction with actually hearing someone's voice and talking to someone makes people kind of back off a little bit sometimes, and they won't be as likely to flame or be toxic. When on the other hand, if you're just playing with a complete stranger and you're not actually talking to them as a human being, it could be a lot easier to just flame the living hell out of them in the chat. And I do think one final thing that is worth noting is the fact that Riot Games also just released the closed beta for Valorant, and within that game they have voice comms, so at least it shows that they're capable of doing it, and hopefully they see the success that goes on within that game and they decide to then implement it within League of Legends. So now I'm all done complaining about the lack of communication within League of Legends, but I'm not done talking about the toxicity and overall the punishment system within League of Legends. Like I've already mentioned, League of Legends is believed to be the most toxic game out there, and it's been the most toxic game out there for a very long time now, and it's only getting worse every single day, but this is all due to the really bad punishment system that we have in play. After all, this game has been out there for 9 years or something like that now, and the fact that there's still players out there that blatantly flame, intentionally feed, or troll, it's getting a little out of control, and I honestly don't see how these players are still allowed to play the game. One problem that I have with addressing this though is the fact that I don't actually know what their punishment system is. I've only heard rumors about what they actually do when it comes to evaluating a player that has been reported, but I have been told that they don't actually look into the games. All they really do is have like a bot setup that goes through the chat and tries to pick out certain keywords that could target a player and potentially ban them. But aside from that, I don't know all too much. What I do know though is that players are blatantly AFKing, rage quitting, feeding, trolling, and so many other things, and they're not getting punished at all. I would be able to sleep a lot better at night if I knew the people who ran it down and went 0-15, or the people who went 0-5 5 minutes in and then sat AFK and base the rest of the night. I'd sleep a lot better at night if I knew that they were actually being punished. But the problem is I'm probably going to queue up tomorrow and run into the exact same players and have them do the exact same thing all over again. I don't want to spend too much time here talking about the punishment system within League and all the problems that I have with it, because again, I don't have a solution for it, basically just because I don't know enough about it, and I don't want to sit here and complain, but I did just want to get my thoughts out there. Moving on from that though, next up I want to talk about the state of solo queue. At the end of the day, 99% of the League of Legends player base are solo queue players or casual players, people who play ARAMs or normals. And the problem that I have here is that I feel like Riot Games puts too much priority on pro play. If the majority of their player base are casual players, then I really believe that they should tailor towards those players. I find it a little unfair that sometimes solo queue players are getting punished because of habits or metas that are being established in pro play. For example, there's been countless occasions where a specific champion will have a 44% win rate in solo queue, but will be pick or ban in competitive play. In a situation like this, Riot Games then decides to nerf that champion even harder. Even though that champion was already bad in solo queue, just because it was good in competitive play, that champion is going to be even worse, and the players who enjoyed playing that champion will struggle even more. Now don't get me wrong, competitive play is really important, and I think that all of these players that I'm talking about really look up to those players to learn from them, but at the same time, Riot shouldn't limit the casual player just to ensure that the pro players are satisfied. Now this may be a really extreme example, but it's the only fix that I could possibly think of at the time. But what comes to mind is an example from Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Some of you guys may have known this already, but in competitive play for Super Smash Bros. Brawl, the character Meta Knight is actually banned from competitive play just because of how incredibly broken he is. They very easily could have just nerfed this character, but if they did that, it wouldn't have been nearly as enjoyable for the casual player. So instead what they do is they ensure that the casual player can still have fun playing this character, and they just make it so that competitive play can't touch this character. Again, this is a really extreme example, but I think that this could fix a lot of problems. You've seen champions like Yuumi or Tahm Kench who, even when they're struggling in solo queue with 40% win rates, they're still really strong in competitive play, so they're never ever going to get the chance to be strong in solo queue for this reason. Again, I understand this is a super extreme example and pros all over the world would probably disagree with this, but it is the only proposition or idea that I have. At the end of the day, I just think that the casual player should be the main focus of this game, not the 1% of the players that are actually pros. Well, alright then, ladies and gentlemen, that should just about wrap up the end of this video. I hope you guys did go on to enjoy it. Again, if you did, feel free to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Also, again, feel free to add anything that you could possibly have on your mind down in the comment section below to add to the conversation. Thank you guys so much for watching to the end of this one. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.